Hello, welcome to video training. We'll be covering accounts receivable, level 1, chapter 2, posting payments and credits and setting beginning balances. From the main menu, let's go into accounts receivable. Earlier we created customers. Obviously we created customers using customer file maintenance or from the inventory system or from the service package or from a major unit system. Now what we want to do is do some posting. Let's go into posting. This is where you can do various different functions. For example, post invoices, debit memos, journal entries, and finance charges. Normally those things are done through our other modules. For example, invoices are normally done through the POT system, the service system, the major unit system. General ledger entries are usually done through general ledger. Finance charges are usually done at the end of the month. So normally this is not used. Typically the only time you'll be using this is if you're manually backdating things or setting beginning balances. Let's start off with posting a payment. There are three options here of posting a payment. And credit memos work very similar. First one is post payment. Second is post payment by date. Fast post payment unallocated. What's the difference of those three? If somebody sends me a check and I need to basically distribute that check to certain invoices. In other words, that person might have 10 open items and I want to pick 3 particular items that this customer is paying for, and I want to pick the right items. I would want to go in and use post payment. If in fact I didn't really care, he just paid $1,000 on his account, and he just wants to pay the oldest invoice, and I had 10 open invoices, it would allocate that amount to the oldest invoices appropriately. Much faster. It automatically just goes in and it's going to ask you for an amount and just post it to the oldest invoice. There's no reason for picking and choosing. If in fact you got a bunch of checks in and you want to pick and choose but you just don't have the time, you just want to record that the checks have been received, then post payment unallocated means, hey, it's going to post a payment to the customer's account so he does receive the credit, and we can allocate it to the individual accounts at a later date. Let's give you an example of all three. First, let's take post payment. This is the method where somebody paid $1,000 on a bill, and we want to pick and choose exactly where we want that $1,000 to be allocated. It's asking me some general ledger questions. You will not see this screen if you're not using general ledger. Okay, first it's asking me, okay, who's the customer? Now, I can type in a customer's telephone number, hit the enter key, and that customer will show up on the screen. I can also type in a name. So you can type in, enter customer name or number, and depending on what you type, it'll do the appropriate lookup. Or I can hit the lookup key and do any type of look I want. Last name, keyword, by account number. Keyword obviously looks at everything in the file. We've gone over that earlier. So let's say Larry Bird paid something on his account. He owes us $2,200. It's only showing me the open items. An open item is something that still has a balance. Obviously, if we look at this, this is a service RO. The RO tells me that's a service. There's the RO number. There's the actual particular boat we worked on, a product we worked on. This was another service RO where the original bill was $792 and $13.65 has been paid previously. Finance charges, these are POTS invoices. So let's assume that Larry gave us $1,000. We're going to select this thing, pay item, F9. When we select paid item, it's saying, okay, how much is he paying? He's paying $1,000. And let's suppose he's giving me a check. Now it basically says, okay, we have $1,000. How do you want to distribute it to his open items? Well, obviously we could hit F4, but if we knew that we wanted to do it by date, you might want to just use the other option, which would have been a little bit quicker. So the fact that we use this option means typically I want to pick and choose where I want it to go. So F4 is just going to take that $1,000, start at the top, and allocate as much as it can to each and every invoice. But let's suppose I want to actually say, look at this $462 invoice, I want to pay the whole thing. I'm going to hit the Enter key. It says the balance due on that particular line item is $462. I want to apply everything, that $1,000 to that. I'm going to hit the Enter key. What that does, now it applied the total amount to that. What's left here to allocate is $537. Let's suppose I want to pay the next one. Now blue is the ones I've done. Yellow obviously is where I am. So I'm going to select the next line. But maybe on this line the balance due is $778. I only want to allocate $500. The customer said he's only paying $500 on that particular invoice. Maybe there's a problem and we need to talk about it. I'm going to hit the Enter key. Now we've taken $500. What's left to allocate is $37.70. Now I can continue allocating the $37. If I hit F12, which means update, what it would do, it would allocate the appropriate amount to the invoices that are dark blue. It would take that $37 and stick it down there saying this is unallocated, and I can allocate it at a later date. But let's suppose I want to allocate this some more. I'm going to select the finance charge. I'm going to pay that in full. It's $29. That leaves me $7.84 left to allocate. And let's suppose I'm going to pick this next finance charge and I am going to use the remaining $7.84 on that. I just need to hit the Enter key. And this thing is now 0. Now I have two options here. If I hit cancel right here, nothing happens. It's going to go right back to the beginning and make believe nothing happened. If I hit F12, it is now going to update that. Because I have general ledger, it's updating my general ledger, and now this is his balance and this is the remaining. Notice what's left on here is we applied that 784 and what's left is 2478. So obviously, it's relatively simple. You would hit now F2 and you'd go down and type in the next customer. Now, suppose the customer says, and you find out a lot of this when you're opening the mail. He says, oh, by the way, my telephone number changed. By the way, my address changed. By the way, my email address changed. Well, there's a button here called Customer Maintenance. By selecting that, now I'm into my customer file. I can change his account number by selecting this. I can change his email address. I can change anything I wish to change and then hit change. So it gives you the option of changing things, the typical things that happen when you're opening the mail and posting checks. Another thing that you can do, obviously, is hit next, go backwards, previous, pay item, list all. What's list all? Well, let's go back to Larry Bird. Because we're in a customer payment program, it's only showing me his open invoices. And maybe I want to see everything. I want to see his complete history. So you can see his complete history by clicking on this button that says List All. This shows me every single item which Larry has. Now, obviously, we can see that, these are fully paid. And if you click on any item, you can get to the detail of that item. Obviously, this is a work order. This here is a POTS invoice. So you can get as much information as you want. If you select List All again, it goes back to just showing me open items. Normally when you're paying bills, that's all you want to look at is open items. So let's go through that one more time. I'm going to hit F2 and then I'm going to type in, we'll type in a telephone number. And I've got Mike. And let's just say Mike sends a check for $500. I'm going to hit F9. Now, Mike had an unallocated credit that's out in his file that we have not allocated yet. I can select that now and allocate that $3.16, or I can hit the escape key and say, no, I don't know what that's for. Somebody else put that in. They can do that later. I'm going to put in $500, and it was a check, and there's the check number. And now I can hit F4, which will just apply it to the oldest invoice date, and now that's applied, and that's one way to do it. Or I can hit F9 again. There again, I do not want to apply that. Type in $500 again, give it a check number, and this time pick and choose what I want. Do I want to apply the whole $80? Yes, I do. And there again, it will give me, so I can pay each individual account. Now, so I've distributed that complete amount of money. Balance due is right here, $753. Okay, back to our lookup. Look up the customer you want to apply to. You also can do cash for somebody that doesn't owe you money. For example, suppose Bobby Orr says, you know what, I'm going to send you $1,000 and I want to use it on my account. If you hit F9 and you say $1,000, and he gives me a check, and I'm going to use a check number here. And this time what I'm going to do is there is no bill, but he gave me $1,000. So I'm just going to say update it. And what it's going to say is no cash distributed. Yep, that's okay. And now it's saying, okay, he's given me some money. It's not for anything. He doesn't have any bills. He's maybe wants $1,000 open account, and he's going to be drawing off that as he buys product. And so now Bobby Orr has a unallocated $1,000 credit on his account. Okay. That's posting payment. Obviously, that's a little bit more work. It's asking you to pick and choose. Now, if in fact you just want to say, hey, look, I got a pile of checks. I just want to put them in, and I just pay the oldest bill. That's all I pay. I don't really need to care. The fact that I got $1,000, I just want to go to the oldest bill and distribute it to the oldest item out there. Then, obviously, it's far faster using this. Fast post payment by date. It works very similar. You would type in the customer's account or his name. It tells me that he owes me $753. Maybe he gave me $500. Maybe it's a check. And I'm just hitting the enter key. Okay to post, yes. And it just posted it to the oldest account. That's all it did. So this obviously is much more streamlined. Type in your customer. He owes me $1,000. Type in 500. Hit the enter key. Okay to post. It posted it to his oldest invoice. So there again, if we go here, we're looking at my customer. If we need to change the address, state, anything we need to change. If we need to look at the detail of what's going on, here's his detail. There's these payments that he made. And they got allocated to the oldest invoice. And there again, if we need to select any particular invoice, we can get as much information as we want. Here's the person that sold it to him. This is the date. This was the computer it was done on. That was the time. If I want to actually reprint the invoice, obviously we can do that, as you know. Okay, so this is obviously much faster. It's only going to ask you two questions. Who's the customer? What's the amount? And it's just going to allocate it to the oldest invoice. If there is no invoice out there, it's going to put it in as unallocated, and the customer will have a credit balance. If we need to do a customer lookup, it's right here. If we need to get into the customer file to change an address, city, state, zip, anything like that, or if you want, you can actually thumb through your customers. Okay, now let's go into the next option, fast post payment unallocated. What that would be is I've got checks in the mail. I don't have a lot of time on my hands. I don't want to go in and pick and choose. I've got 20 checks. All I want to do is post the checks that they come in. So when that customer comes in, his balance is correct. The fact that he owes me less money now because I got the check today, I will figure out where I want to allocate it later. That's where you would use this here, fast payment unallocated. It's basically the same thing. I would type in the account number. He owes me $737, and let's just say he gave me $250, and it's today, and here's the check number, and I'm posting that. It's basically just saying, okay, I'm putting it in this file, but it's unallocated. You can actually post it and say what particular item it's for at a later date. And it's the same thing here. Now, when we look at that account, and we look at his history, we will see that we have an unallocated check for $100. Now, how do you allocate that check? At some point in time, I'm probably going to want to allocate it. Well, when you want to go into allocate a check, you would go right here, post payment. And now what I would do, I'd look up that customer who was Mike Ticker, and I can see that he's got $100 unallocated. And anytime you try to pay something, F9, it's going to say, okay, there's two unallocated. One's a credit memo that we put it in, but we didn't say what it was for. The other one is the payment, where we put the credit in. We know that he paid, but we didn't really tell the computer what it was for. Obviously, if you're not picking and choosing, going it by date is the way to go. I'm going to pick the $100 payment here. It's just like I did it, and I would actually say, hey, just pay by date. Pay by date. It actually took it off this bill right here. Okay, so we've talked about post payment, post by date, post unallocated. Credit is literally the exact same thing. Usually when you're putting credits in, normally you want to put a credit in for a particular reason. You want to credit a particular invoice. For example, if Larry said, look, I'm not paying that total service work order, you didn't do the job right, I expect you to help me out, and you say, okay, I'll give you a $100 credit, then you'd probably want to do that, and you'd probably want to pick a particular invoice. You can do the same thing, do it by date, and it was just going to pick the oldest. But let's just do this here. It's a credit memo. It literally works the same thing. Let's just take a look at Larry here, and let's say that Larry didn't want to pay this invoice right here in full because there was a problem, and we said, okay, we'll give you a $100 credit on that. Well, we would do the same thing. We'd hit pay item, and we have a payment that we haven't allocated yet, but that's not what we want to do. We want to do a credit memo. And let's just say we're going to give him a credit memo for $100, and this is the date we're giving it to him. And what's the reason? You normally want a reason. Well, just goodwill. And there again, you could type your reason. Now there's my $100 credit. Now normally you'd want to apply that to a particular invoice because that's why you're doing the credit memo. Obviously you could do it by date. But let's say I just want to apply the credit memo to this bill right here. Or maybe this one here. It really doesn't matter. Click on it. If I want to apply the whole $100 there, I can. If I want, I could do 50 and 50 on each invoice. There again, it's exactly the same as posting cash, except we're doing a credit memo. Now we posted that in full. I'm going to say update. And here's our credit memo. And now when you do credit memos, it's going to say, do you want a receipt? Lots of times when somebody says, well, I want a credit, can you give me a receipt? I want to see a receipt for that. Well, you can say yes. And obviously it'll print a receipt, with whatever description you put, the fact that you're giving the customer a $100 credit. Credit memo. Okay. And this has the exact same options of next, lookup, same thing. Posting credit memos by date. There again, it just puts it to the date. If you don't really care about picking a particular invoice, the same as everything pretty much works the same. If I want to put this $50 invoice, what's the reason? It's going to default to credit memo. Maybe I want to give it the reason. Normally you would do that. Hit enter. That's now in the system, and it put it to the oldest invoice. And if I don't need to print a receipt, I'm not going to. Okay. Now, some other things you may want to do in here. Search, list, and update. This is something that's kind of like I just want to see a listing of all my customers. Maybe I want to go in and change the customer code for certain types of customers. And I don't want to be going in and out and in and out. And this is something where it will just list all your customers based on what you tell it. Maybe I want to list it by customer code, or maybe I want to do it by state or just a keyword. But we'll do it by customer code. And I'm just going to hit everything. And it creates what we call a drop down of all my customers. And this is a useful tool because what it does, it gives you your balance, it gives you the age groups and how much money they owe you. And you can just click on any customer you want. So I can go down here and say, let's check out Tom Moore. And maybe I want to update my customer code, and I'm just going to hit F5, and I'm going to hit OK, and now I'm done. And now maybe I need to update Mike. And maybe I want to do this here, and I hit F5, and I'm down here, I hit escape. So it allows me to get in and check out a lot of things relatively easy. And from here, obviously, I can get to here. I can get to, printing invoices. I can pretty much do anything I want. So this gives me the same features. So if I have to do a lot of maintenance, or I want to go in and say, you know what, I forgot to put some information in with my customers, maybe I've added some new fields in the user define, and I want to update maybe 10 or 15 customers, well, it's much easier just to list your customers, select here, go in and change what you want to change, and then get out and then select the next one. So there again, that's what it's for. It's a very useful tool for going in, and maybe you just want to print statements for 5 or 6 people. You can just click here and just print statements for 5 or 6 people and list the ones you want to do. So it is a useful tool for when you really need to get a listing, drill down, get a little bit more information without going in and out and typing in account numbers or names and things like that. And that's what we call search, list, and update. Okay. Now, we also have some other options here. You can actually change AR descriptions where you can look up a particular line item. Maybe by accident I put the wrong description in for a particular memo, and I want to change that description. So if somebody's looking at it a year from now, they really know what it is. This gives you the ability to do that. You would type in the item number and then be able to change the description. Now, the next thing is, what do I do after I get very familiar with the system and now all I want to do is put balances in? Typically when people start off using the system, they're starting off with customer owes me X amount of dollars. Well, there's 2 ways of doing that. Obviously, it's a lot of work keying in all the invoices and putting in the detail. That is a grave task. Usually what most customers do is they pick a date when they're going to start going live, and they're saying, okay, as of the 31st of the end of the month, I'm going to go in and put on my balances of each customer and how much they owe me. So you'd probably want to do that by going into here. Now this gives you various different options. Now there again, this is typically never used other than when you first start using the system. If you want to go in and set balances, all right, I just put all my new customers in. None of them have balances. Now I want to go in and put the balance in for my customers. You would actually type in the customer, obviously this is Evel Knievel. You would type in, now obviously the description might be something that's meaningful. You probably want to say balance as of some date. So now when you're looking at that a year from now, 4 years from now, you'll know what that was. It should be something meaningful. Now you can put this in as an invoice, which is probably what you want to do, or a debit memo. You'd probably want that date to be what you're setting your balance for. Obviously this should be in sync. This is the date I'm setting my balance. This is as of 3/31. If you want to give it a control number, for example, what that might be used for, maybe you want to get a report where, okay, maybe a year from now I want to see a listing of all the beginning balances that I did. Well, put something in here where you better list it out. Now I'm going to say I want invoice BEG, which would be all my beginning balances. Obviously, this is the amount. This person owes me $2,300. I'm going to hit F12. And it's making my general ledger entries. Okay, and I'm done. Now if I want to put the next one, notice how it keeps the date. I would key in the next customer number. If you wanted, you could cut and paste that description if you're going to use the same one over and over again. That probably would be a good idea. And there again, I would actually cut and paste this so you're not have to doing multiple typing. Hit invoice, put in your control number and whatever the balance is. And now what we've done is we've setting the balance for all those customers. Okay, when we're done, it's going to tell me the total of what we did. All right, so now what we've gone in, we know how to post payments when they come in. We know how to post credit memos. We know how to do some mass changes. Once you may want to do after you've done all this is you probably want to go in and run a report and do an age trial balance to see exactly, check the balances of all your customers. Next thing you want to do from here is look at the next chapter, which will be going over aging your accounts and running reports. Okay, This ends this session.